Some years, the garden is easy. You plant what everyone plants, and it works. But other years, you go to order seeds and the popular stuff is already picked over. Or you grow a beautiful harvest, and by winter, you realize it didn't turn into food. So today, I'm going to walk you through a set of crops you can start now that do one thing really well. They fill the pantry, not just the garden bed. And I'm not talking about the obvious ones. These are the overlooked growers, the quiet workhorses that keep showing up for you. There's one on this list that stores right in the ground like a living root cellar, and another that can replace a chunk of your spice rack with one plant. After years of growing for real family meals, I've learned this: the best security isn't drama, it's a system. Let's set the tone for this video. This is not panic gardening, it's pantry gardening. Because if you're growing food for a family, there's a difference between a garden that looks productive and a garden that actually feeds you later. When I say fills your pantry, I mean 3 simple paths. First, dry pantry. Beans, herbs, things you can put in a jar and forget about for a while. Second, freezer pantry. Greens you blanch, shoots you freeze, berries you bag up fast before they soften. And third, living pantry. The kind of food that stores outside in cool weather, in the ground, or in a simple low-tech space like a cellar corner, a garage shelf, or a tote with some sand. Here at Family Yard Kitchen, we come back to the same loop. Grow it, store it, cook it, and let the garden make everyday meals feel a little steadier. So I'm going to give you 12 crops, overlooked, practical, and start now friendly. For each one, I'll share why people skip it, what it needs to get going, and how it becomes pantry food. And I'll keep it real. Not every plant works in every climate. Not every harvest stores the same way. But you'll leave this video with options you can actually use. All right, let's start with the one that turns a garden into a pantry faster than almost anything else. If you want pantry food, you can't ignore dry beans. And I know, beans don't get the same attention as tomatoes. They're not flashy. They don't make your garden look like a magazine cover. But they do something better. They become meals that sit on a shelf. Dry beans are overlooked because most people only grow green beans. They pick them young, they eat them fresh, and that's fine. But if you grow one good patch of beans to maturity, you're growing protein you can store without a freezer. Here's how to think about it in a family yard. You don't need a huge field. Even a small bed can matter if you pick one reliable variety and give it support. Bush beans are simple and compact. Pole beans take vertical space, but often produce more over time, and they're perfect along a fence or trellis. Plant when your soil is warm enough for steady germination. Beans don't like sitting cold and wet. They want warmth, and then they take off. Now the pantry part. The easiest way is also the oldest way. Let the pods dry down on the plant as much as your weather allows. When the pods feel papery and the seeds inside feel hard, pull the plants or pick the pods and bring them under cover. A basket, a tray, a paper bag, somewhere dry with airflow. Then shell them, put them in jars, and label the date, because future you will genuinely thank you. And here's a little system that keeps this calm. Cook what you need, store what you'll actually eat, and save a small portion as seed, just enough that next season doesn't depend on what's in stock online. Now, if you like the idea of plant once and keep getting food, the next crop is almost unfair. Egyptian walking onions are one of those plants that make you wonder why they aren't everywhere. They're overlooked because people don't see them in the seed racks. They sound weird and they don't look like a perfect supermarket onion. But what they do give you is steady, reliable onion flavor year after year without replanting the usual way. They're called walking onions because instead of making a typical flower head, they make little bulb clusters at the top. Those top sets get heavy, they bend the stalk down, and when they touch soil, they can root and start new plants. So the patch slowly walks outward. Now, if you have a small yard, don't let that scare you. You just give them a spot with a border, a corner, or a contained bed edge. Or you harvest the top sets so they don't wander. What does Start Now look like? Usually, you're planting sets or bulbils, not tiny seeds, and that's a good thing because it means you get established plants faster. Once they're in, they handle cold well. They show up early in the season, often when you're craving something green and sharp in your cooking. And pantry-wise, they pull their weight. The green tops can be chopped and frozen in small portions. The bulbils can be pickled like tiny onions. The stronger bits can be dried and turned into an onion sprinkle for soups and stews. And this is one of those family garden wins. When you can walk outside and snip onion flavor without thinking too hard, your cooking becomes easier, and your pantry becomes more flavorful all winter. If this kind of pantry-first growing is helpful, consider subscribing, because the next videos build on this with simple preserving routines that actually stick. Now, speaking of flavor that makes simple food taste like it cooked all day, this next plant is a quiet powerhouse. Lovage is the plant I think of as soup energy. It's overlooked because it's not trendy. Most people stop at basil, parsley, maybe oregano, and lovage sounds like something you'd only grow if you're deep into herbs. But here's the truth. One lovage plant can replace a chunk of your spice rack. The leaves have this strong, savory aroma, almost like celery crossed with a rich broth note. So when winter comes and you're staring at potatoes, beans, rice, and frozen greens, lovage is what makes that food feel warm and complete. Start now-wise, lovage is a perennial in many places, meaning it comes back. It likes sun, but it can tolerate a little softness in the light. And once it's established, it can get big. So give it a spot where it won't crowd out small herbs, a back corner of an herb bed, a side space along a fence. And remember, with lovage, one plant is usually plenty. Now let's turn it into pantry food. You can dry the leaves for seasoning, you can chop and freeze it in small portions, and one of the simplest pantry tricks is lovage salt. You take a small bowl of chopped leaves, mix with salt, spread it thin, and let it dry. Now you've got a savory finishing salt that instantly upgrades soups, eggs, roasted vegetables, anything that needs a little something. And this is the bigger point. A pantry isn't just calories. It's the things that make basic food taste good enough that you'll actually want to eat it week after week without getting bored. So we started with stability, dry beans, then self-reliance, walking onions, and now pantry flavor. Next, we're going to move into greens, because one of the biggest pantry mistakes is growing greens you can't realistically preserve, and this crop solves that. So here's the problem with a lot of leafy greens. They grow fast, and then they bolt, or they melt in summer heat, or you get a big harvest all at once and it turns into a wilted pile on the counter. Perpetual spinach is overlooked mostly because of the name. It's not true spinach, it's a type of leaf beet, but it behaves like the spinach most of us wish we had. It's steady, it's forgiving, and it keeps giving you leaves for a long stretch of the season. In a small family yard, this is one of the best quiet staples you can grow because it doesn't require perfect timing. You can sow it early, you can sow it again later, and once it gets going, you harvest it the same way you'd harvest kale. Outer leaves first, leave the center, and let it keep producing. Now, let's make it pantry food. This is one of those greens that freezes beautifully if you do one simple thing. Blanch it. Just a quick dip in boiling water, then straight into cold water, then squeeze it dry. Not fancy, just enough to lock in the texture and keep it from turning into that sad, slimy freezer green. Then I like to portion it in small meal-sized bundles, because future you doesn't want to thaw a giant brick. Future you wants 2 handfuls for soup or 1 handful for scrambled eggs. And if you keep chickens, this is also one of those greens you can share in moderation. Not as the whole diet, just as part of a mixed greens bowl. A little treat, a little variety, not a main feed. All right, we've got pantry greens handled. Now, let's talk about the kind of crop that shows up when your garden looks like it's shutting down. Purple sprouting broccoli is for the season when most people aren't expecting fresh food anymore. It's overlooked because people buy broccoli expecting one big head. You know the picture. One plant, one harvest, done. But purple sprouting broccoli doesn't play that game. It gives you shoots, lots of tender shoots. And depending on your climate, it can produce when the weather is cool and the rest of the garden is quiet. This is one of those crops that feels like a gift because it changes the mood in your kitchen. There's something about being able to bring in a bowl of fresh shoots when your meals are starting to feel heavy. Beans, potatoes, stored squash, and you just want something bright. Start now timing is important here. In many places, you're planting it well before you want it. It's not a plant in fall, harvest in fall situation. It's more like plant at the right time so the plant can grow strong, and then it rewards you later when you least expect it. Pantry-wise, purple sprouting broccoli is a freezer win. When you get a harvest of shoots, you can blanch them quickly and freeze them in portions. Then, in winter, you've got broccoli flavor and nutrition ready to drop into soups, stir-fries, casseroles without depending on the store. And if you've ever paid winter prices for a bag of broccoli, you already know why that matters. By the way, if you're enjoying this list, drop a comment with your growing zone. It helps other families know which of these overlooked crops are realistic where they live. Now, let's stay in the cool weather lane because the next one is a little newer and surprisingly kid-friendly when you cook it right. Kalettes are overlooked because they're not a classic backyard staple yet. People hear the name and assume it's fussy, or they think that's probably expensive seed and complicated to grow. But Kalettes are basically a cross between kale and Brussels sprouts, and they give you these small leafy mini heads that are perfect for quick meals. Here's the pantry angle. Kalettes are one of those crops that actually gets better in cold weather, and you don't need a science degree to understand why. When temperatures dip, many plants shift their chemistry a little. They turn stored energy into sugars. So after a light frost, you can taste the difference. It's not a miracle, it's just the plant responding to cold. And the reason I'm mentioning that is simple. If you've got family members who don't like kale, this is sometimes the gateway. Start now-wise, Kalettes like time. They're not a last-minute crop. You want healthy plants, steady growth, and then the harvest comes later. So if you're thinking about pantry food for the cool season, this one is worth planning ahead. Now, storing. You can blanch and freeze Kalettes, yes, but I'll tell you the method that actually gets used in real kitchens. Roast them first. Roast a tray, let them cool, then freeze them in portions. Because then winter meals are easy. You can toss them into a skillet, add eggs, add beans, add leftover meat, and suddenly you've got a meal that tastes fresh, not like freezer vegetables. All right, we've done dry pantry, freezer greens, and cool weather harvests. Now, let's talk about the one I mentioned earlier, the living root cellar that stores right in the ground. Sunchokes are one of the most misunderstood pantry crops. They're overlooked for two reasons. First, people don't know what they are. Second, once they learn, they hear, "Oh, those spread," and they get nervous. And yes, they can spread, but that's not a reason to avoid them. It's a reason to give them a smart location. Think of sunchokes like a permanent patch, a dedicated spot along a fence, a corner you don't mind them owning, or even a contained area where you harvest consistently. Because once established, they're hardy. They grow tall, almost like sunflower stalks, and they produce edible tubers underground. Here's why they're so pantry-friendly. You don't have to harvest all at once. In fact, you usually shouldn't. You can leave tubers in the ground and harvest as needed. Cool weather helps keep them firm. So instead of cramming your pantry with one big harvest day, you've got a food source that stays put until you're ready. And in a family yard, that matters. Because storage isn't just where you store. Storage is how stressful the harvest is. If you can pull dinner from the garden in late fall or early winter, even if it's just a basket of tubers, that changes your whole relationship with running out. Now, a gentle real-life note. Some people find sunchokes a little intense at first. So the best approach is simple. Start small in your meals. Cook them well. Pair them with familiar foods. No drama. Just ease in and see how your family does with them. Okay, next up is a fruit that's overlooked for a different reason. People assume blueberries are the only worth it berry. Honeyberries, also called hascat, are overlooked because they aren't a default garden purchase. Most folks go straight to strawberries, raspberries, blueberries. But honeyberries have two pantry advantages. One, many varieties handle cold climates really well. Two, they're one of the easiest berries to store because they freeze beautifully. The fruit is kind of an elongated berry, often deep blue, and the flavor can lean tangy sweet like a mix of blueberry and something brighter. Now, the start now detail that matters. You usually want more than one variety for good pollination and better harvests. So instead of buying one lonely bush, plan for a pair. And if you're working in a small yard, that's still possible. Honeyberries can be tucked into an edible landscape, a line along a path, a corner by a fence, or even a hedge that's doing double duty, privacy and food. Pantry-wise, this one's simple. Pick, freeze on a tray if you want them loose, or bag them straight if you don't mind them clumping a little. And in winter, those berries become quick jam, syrup for pancakes, mix-ins for oatmeal, or just a handful in a bowl when you're craving something fresh. Now, before we move on, I want to drop a quick mini lesson because it keeps this whole topic from turning into overwhelm. If you remember one thing from this video, make it this. You don't need 12 crops to build a pantry. You need a balanced system. Think of it like a triangle. Dry pantry staples, like beans and dried herbs, freezer staples, like greens, shoots, and berries, living storage, things that hold in the ground or in cool storage. When you have all three, you're not dependent on one method. If your freezer is full, you still have dry beans. If you didn't can anything this year, you still have living storage outside. That's what Start Now really means. Not doing everything, just choosing the right mix. All right, back to the list. Next up, we're getting into crops that are fun, productive, and turn into jars fast, and they're perfect for people who want quick pantry wins. Ground cherries are one of those crops that people either fall in love with or never even try. They're overlooked because they don't look like a standard backyard fruit. They come in these papery husks like tiny lanterns, so people assume they're fussy. But in a lot of yards, they grow with the same general attitude as tomatoes: sun, warmth, time. And once they start producing, they can be surprisingly generous. Here's the key thing with ground cherries. The fruit often drops when it's ripe. So instead of pulling it early like a tomato, you're watching for those husks to turn tan and you're gathering ripe fruit from the soil. It feels old-fashioned, in a good way, like you're foraging in your own garden bed. Now, the pantry part is where ground cherries really shine, because they're naturally suited for dehydrating into little chewy, sweet bites, cooking into jam or a simple fruit sauce, and even freezing in small batches for winter baking. And if your goal is a pantry that feels like comfort, not just survival, a jar of ground cherry jam in February does a lot for morale. All right, next crop is the opposite vibe: small, crunchy, and unbelievably easy to turn into pickles. Cucamelons look like little watermelon grapes, and that's exactly why people overlook them. They assume it's a novelty plant, something cute for kids but not real food. But cucamelons can be pantry food, and here's why. They're productive, they're small enough that you don't waste anything, and they're basically built for jars. If you've ever had a cucumber harvest get ahead of you, you know how fast it turns into stress. Cucamelons are the opposite. You can pick a handful, toss them in the fridge, or pickle them in small batches without feeling like you need an assembly line. Start Now-wise, treat them like a warm season vine. They love a trellis, they love climbing, and if you give them vertical space, they're a perfect small yard crop. Now let's make them pantry friendly. You can do quick fridge pickles, fermented pickles if you like that tang and crunch, or even a simple vinegar brine for shelf-stable processing if you're experienced and following safe canning methods. And here's a small detail families appreciate. Their size makes them snackable. They're the kind of thing a kid can pull off the vine, rinse, and eat, or you can toss into lunch containers. Okay, next up is an herb that feels fancy but is actually practical and stores in more ways than people realize. Shiso is overlooked because people think it belongs in restaurant food. A garnish, a specialty herb, something you'd only use once. But shiso is one of the best flavor builders you can grow if you're trying to make pantry meals taste alive. It comes in green and purple types, it can handle warm weather, it grows in beds or containers, and once you get it going, it can be surprisingly generous. Now, Start Now is simple. Shiso likes warmth, and it appreciates consistent moisture while it's getting established. And if you let it flower and drop seed, it can come back on its own in many gardens. Pantry-wise, shiso is flexible. You can chop it and freeze it in little cubes with a bit of oil or water, turn it into a pesto-style blend for noodles and soups, Salt pack the leaves for a pickled herb vibe, or dry it and crumble it into seasoning. And that matters, because winter food can get repetitive. One herb that changes the whole bowl is worth its space. All right, our last crop on the list is small, but it's a perfect example of the family yard principle. Because you don't need the biggest harvest, you need the most useful harvest. Alpine strawberries are overlooked because they're not the big glossy berries people picture. The fruit is smaller. But the flavor is often intense, sweet, fragrant, almost like strawberry candy. And in a small yard, alpine strawberries can do something that big strawberry patches often struggle with. They can tuck into edges and keep producing without taking over your whole garden plan. You can grow them in pots, along a walkway, in a border, even in partial shade depending on your setup. Now, pantry-wise, here's the truth. You're not growing alpine strawberries for giant bowls to freeze. You're growing them for small batch jam, dehydrated berry chips for oatmeal, and those little winter treats that make breakfast feel special. And this is worth saying out loud. A pantry that feeds a family isn't only built on bulk, it's also built on small comforts. A jar of berry jam, a pinch of dried herb, a handful of something sweet when the weather is gray. So, that's the 12. Dry beans, walking onions, lovage, perpetual spinach, purple sprouting broccoli, Kalettes, Sunchokes, Honeyberries, ground cherries, cucamelons, Shiso, and alpine strawberries. Now, let's pull it together and make sure you leave with a simple plan for starting now. If you've been listening and thinking that's a lot, let me make this calm. You don't have to grow all 12. In fact, most families shouldn't. Instead, choose 2 this season. Pick one fast pantry win and one long game. A fast pantry win might be dry beans, perpetual spinach for the freezer, or cucamelons for pickles. A long game might be honeyberries, lovage, sunchokes, or walking onions, plants that reduce how much you have to buy and restart every year. And if you've been seeing talk about seeds being harder to get or popular varieties selling out early, here's the steady response. Build a system that doesn't depend on hype. Grow things that store well. Save seed where it makes sense. Lean into perennials and self-seeders, and let your pantry build slowly, one season at a time. And if you're planning garden beds around storage crops, our Veggie Matchmaker's Guide can help you pair plants in a way that keeps the whole patch calmer and more productive without overcomplicating it. Before you go, I want to make this practical. If you're building a pantry garden, the next step isn't just growing calories. It's growing the little kitchen helpers that make stored food taste good all winter. So I put a companion video on your screen right now. It's all about old kitchen herbs families used for generations and how to actually use them in real everyday cooking. Click that next video and I'll walk you through it calmly, step by step. I'll see you there.